Excellent. Welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals. And part of what we do, along with special guests, are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We've had a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see, which we'll go through. But if there's anybody here live on the call who would like to ask any questions, please feel free to flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. Also, there's usually lots of other amazing SEOs live on the call that share their ideas, experiences, and perspectives. I personally think that's one of the best things about SEO Office Hours is not just hearing from the four of us, but from everybody else. So please feel free to do that. Like always, with me today is Juliana Turnbull, also known as SEO Joe Blogs. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Excuse my voice, it's a little bit different today. I'll be hopefully resting it a lot over the weekend. Thank you, everyone, as I said, for joining. As Mike said, right in the chat where you are calling in from. I think we've got quite a few countries so far. We've got the UK, Spain, Pakistan, then we've got Nigeria. I think we've got maybe India as well. I'm not sure. So write that down where we are dialing it, where you're dialing it from. So I want to say a big welcome to everyone that's joined us. Boran, Bukosoy, Caitlin, Favor, Itamar, obviously our special guest, John, Jojo, Jonathan, Mark. We have Nafisha, Rob, and Shahira, Simon, Zito, Kozi, Umama, Vishal, Walid, Jordan. So we've got some regulars and we've got some new guests. So thank you for signing up and joining us at SEO Office Hours. So as Mike said, I am Juliana Turnbull. I organize events, Search London in London and also Search London in Barcelona. And our next one's going to be in October. And I'm always really excited about events. That's one of our questions later on today. I wanted to say a big thank you to two of our special guests. We have Itamar and James joining us on the show. Thank you for coming on SEO Office Hours.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me, and thanks for getting these organized is it every single week?
Every Friday, yes.
Incredible.
Yes, we are running these every Friday at 9:30 p.m. British Summer Time. And then we're doing it all the way to the end of the year and obviously next year too. Itamar, you've been very busy as well. You are the senior SEO director at Studio Hawk. You're also an SEO trainer, you're speaker at many events. You host the SEO Unplugged podcast, and you're also an author too. And you'll be speaking at certain stuff in Turkey in October and then in Spotlight at Spotlight Conference in the Netherlands. Pretty busy because you also have you worked on SMEs and large enterprise with also B2B and B2C sectors. So very impressive that how you've been able to increase rankings and generate a lot of more exposure for your clients. How do you find the time to do all this?
Just speak really bluntly and speak fairly quickly and do stuff quickly.
That's good, but obviously you get the buy-in first with all the C level. Okay, I'm gonna share your LinkedIn profile here, and so everyone can connect with you. And please, everyone that's joining us, we do have questions, of course, that have been asked or sent through. But if you have anything, please do write it in the chat. And a very big welcome to James. James, you are the CTO and co-owner of Chidzey. They are an award-winning brand and performance marketing agency. They also have an office in London's Shoreditch. You lead the tech, the search, and performance marketing strategy, and you've worked with a number of clients, including Reuters, the Dorchester, Itsu, and you actually started back in 2006. You're working as a designer and developer. So you're very busy as well. You've always have a lot of technical and SEO advice to share with others. And I think you've been a speaker at Search London before. You've definitely come. And you're also going to be at Brighton SEO in the UK in October. So you can find James and connect with James there too. But yeah, you're also very busy, James. How do you do it?
Unlike Itamar, I tend to waffle and I do need to work on speaking more succinctly, but I just love what I do. And I think the way I get through most of it is I just get up early and get on with things and then try and spend time with the family in the evenings and weekends. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a chore when you do something that you enjoy.
So the trick is to get up early then and have some time for you and to do the work that you want.
Absolutely. And
Ah,
good coffee.
good coffee. Oh, great. Actually, we just have a question from Simon. Is there a clue behind James? Is that Darth?
Yeah, I think my camera's got a slightly blurred background, but yeah,
Ah.
it is.
Ah, very good Lego, right? Is that Lego? It looks like a Lego.
Yeah, I love Lego. It's one of my guilty pleasures. I've forced my children to get into Lego so we can all do it together. Yeah, there's a lot of Star Wars stuff behind me.
Oh, a good background. Thank you both for joining us today. We've got loads of questions, as Mike said, so I'm going to pass over to Mike.
Super. Okay, great. So I think this is a follow-on from last week where we were talking about AI agents. And basically, it was after ChatGPT had released their agent, and somebody had asked the question just around how do you basically test whether an agent can access your website? And we basically, I think the main summary was just to set scenarios and see if it achieves what you want it to. We've had another similar question, which is thoughts on AI specific optimization and preparing for agent-based search beyond AI overviews. Who would like to kick off?
Mm.
Ismar, are you okay?
Sure.
Go,
Yeah,
go.
yeah. The agent-based stuff is quite interesting just because I feel like at the moment it's not that great. So asking it to do certain things or access certain websites, a lot of times like you won't be able to get past the captcha, or at least from my experience, it's like you'll get stuck on a captcha, you can try and take over, you can try and do it yourself and it still won't work. But I think over time, I would hope at least that these things will be less of a problem. But in terms of preparing for it, it's just really understanding like what is it that is being surfaced at the moment and thinking about websites in general as just tools that machines are going to just be extracting information from and that users may not necessarily end up going to. And when you think about it like that, I think the sort of perception changes slightly because a lot of people on their websites, historically, they've really tried to add a lot of personality to it, which is where you think real users are going on sites and they're understanding who you are, your sort of tone of voice and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think machines care about that sort of stuff. I think they're trying to objectively understand and extract certain types of entities and basically getting an understanding as to what does this site do and what's it relevant for. So in terms of trying to future-proof with that, it's you run the risk of how do we balance having personality and for people who actually want to visit a website, but also for what the machines would like. And bits of that is just really understanding the sorts of things that it understands currently about your site. So you can ask questions, you can ask it to go look at the site, try and extract information. There's still the issue at the moment with JavaScript and how that's a problem for these machines trying to access sites. So it's okay from a technical perspective. Do you have everything that a machine would want to know within the raw HTML version of your pages and all these sorts of stuff? But it's probably going to evolve. But that's my initial take on that.
Amazing. James, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, happy to. And what's been interesting over the last couple of weeks, I've been working on an RFP that's on my desk where there's 2 pages dedicated to preparedness for agentic actions, compatibility with LLMs, and this being a really big desire to demonstrate this in a response. So I think brands are becoming attuned. The opportunity with this supposed shelf space feels like it's really at peak at the moment. And from our perspective, I know John Mueller not too long ago said if you're leading an e-commerce website, look at agentic capability, compatibility. It's where things are going. So our team are starting to use agents to test and perform those actions. It is in its very early days. I think ever since I saw, I think it was Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO podcast, Order the Water, using an agent to their podcast studio, and it turned up and it made all the decisions. I think that was the kind of wake up call for me that it is coming. It's in its early stages. So at the minute, we're not asking or doing anything dramatically different. We're just experimenting within our agency, checking if compatibility there, seeing how far the agent can get. And like Itamar said, we are having to step in a lot and try and overcome sort of various barriers, decisions or fields in our kind of clients' forms, whether it's options that they have to select that the agent can't fill out. But we are bringing it into our sort of agency products. We're talking about it. But I think it was Barry Adams that he said something quite poignant that resonated with me in one of his SEO for publishers emails about the three core pillars of SEO really remaining unchanged around tech, content, and offsite. And I've used that in a few strategy presentations with clients to talk about how any of these hacks or snake oil techniques to try and specifically go after ranking in, it's not really a huge amount of difference. And obviously because the traffic is increasing, albeit it's still such a small amount, where we're not pushing clients or advisors at the moment to do any dramatic shifts other than just to start to prepare and test. And because we've got an in-house development team in our agency as well, they're taking huge interest in this to ensure that the work that they're doing can be accessed and used by agents. So yeah, it all feels very new, but we're just taking sort of initial baby steps to check in this. But what, like I say, what has been really interesting is that clients are starting to talk about it and ask about it in the last month or two.
Great, amazing answers. We covered this quite a bit last week, and my thoughts haven't changed in terms of just checking to see what an agent can do on your site. Joe, have you got anything to add, or is there anything in the comments?
No, I just wanted to say it's good to hear from our guests that they're actually spending the time and allocating to give ourselves that opportunity to test. It's important when you're working with agencies or consultants that, we all agree that this is still new for us and we can be testing things. We have some great comments in the chat that I'd like to share. Mark said that he was testing the comment browser by Perplexity, asking it to complete tasks on the Candor website, including sending the inquiry form. It actually managed to do this despite the contact form having the Cloudflare verify you are human checkbox. Interesting. Jojo was just saying for what you said, James, that very poignant things to say. Simon also saying that AI at the moment is very literal. You have to be precise about what you're asking it. In essence, AI is training us. That's quite an interesting point. Training us to be better, training us to ask better and more structured questions, perhaps for us to be a bit more succinct. I'm just wondering, and yeah, we have another comment as well from us saying that it's also important to remember to do your structured Q&A, your schema markup as well on your site. And Rob is saying that it depends on the industry you're in. If you're in travel, then agents might be able to book your flight, hotel, theme park. But if you sell clothes and personal taste is more of a factor, then you'll need to think about the agents differently. So good points from our audience.
I remember knowing a PA once who used to book travel for her boss, and if her boss was really annoying her, she used to organize the slightly more difficult routes. So be kind to your agent is probably what I'd say there. Okay, great. Let's go on to the next question. Joe, we've been given a URL. I think you've got it there. If it's possible for you to put into the chat. So this is our website. We want this to rank soon. What are the best practices for this site to rank quickly? What changes do we need to make? And is this the right kind of template for financial services? Thank you. Sorry, I'm starting with you again, if that's all right. Did you get a chance to look at this at all?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Would you be happy to kick off on this one?
Sure. So this one, if I'm not mistaken, calfin.ai.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very sort of brief overview from what I've seen based on just a couple minutes looking around. So please don't take any offense to this. This is just me being my usual self, just being very blunt and honest. So with a .ai domain, I naturally expect there to be some kind of SaaS or some kind of product that people can log into and do a bunch of stuff with, not necessarily for a standard lead gen type B2B looking operation. Now, the other things that I can say off the bat, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it seems like a lot of AI was used for the copy on this site. So I'm looking at the hero text. Not all of it though, because if you scroll down with the about us, you've got facts, experience, and prices, but experience is spelt wrong. So again, just perception for people who are going to be looking to get serious expert advice on their finances. It's sometimes a lot about the perception that people get. And a lot of that's something that also machines don't really understand. Machines, I don't think, will be able to read emotion, have these sorts of thoughts when they land on a site in terms of, does this feel like the content matches what it looks like and what it should be? So just initially, just right off the bat, those were some of the things that I thought. So generally speaking, I think the domain is, if you're not having some kind of AI system or ways to log in, I just don't think that people are going to resonate with that too much. And it's just one of those things that it's just like, yeah, finance is a very boring type of niche. You're going to need to get actual real people in there, get your team in there. Some sort of basic things. A lot of it isn't even SEO focused. It's more just like, bluntly, can people go on the site and think you're a legit company is what I would say is something to think about.
Great. Joe, did you get a chance to look at it at all? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would actually really focus on so that the people behind it, because especially in finance, we have it's your money, your life. And with finance, you really want to be able to have this trust with the people. If this company is saying that they can help you about your financial journey, I would assume that for you to become financially independent and to get financial freedom, then you'd want to actually know who the team is. And it's okay if it's just one person, but that person doesn't, on the About Us page, it doesn't it doesn't look as genuine as perhaps on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, that person has put who they worked for, and they're updating their LinkedIn profile. But I think they really need to really focus on who is the people behind the team. If it is just one person, that's fine, but I'm sure there's got a few more people. You can also put sort of recommendations from other people as well. Just say your speciality. It really helps to have that. I couldn't see any recommendations or reviews. And I'd also, especially as this is finance, I really focus a lot around LinkedIn too. So if this is a one person or a two-person site, that's totally fine. But then build up your LinkedIn profile more and post there, because the LinkedIn, there wasn't that much on LinkedIn relating to this actual website. So I would really focus on the EEAT of the website.
Great. Yeah, I had similar thoughts as well, just to both of you. I think uh, when I first saw the website, I initially thought if I was in charge of this, I would look at it more from a CRO perspective and do some user testing and possibly also some branding or something to make it feel different to other websites. And I think just to add some more trust to the site. I think one thing that's really cool about it is the name. And I think you have an opportunity to really, I think it was Itamar that just said about the people behind it, or it might have been Joe, but you've got a real opportunity to, because it's sort of California based. I know you've got some sort of stock photography and stuff there for California, but I think you could do some great stuff with local people in California to just add those kind of trust signals. I get that it's a brand new website and therefore it doesn't rank for anything at the moment. So sometimes that's something that will come. And if that's the case, then that'll just take a bit of time. I think I would probably spend a little bit of time or money with a designer just to give it its own identity. I think it does feel like a sort of fairly new WordPress template, if you don't mind me saying at the moment. And I think just by giving it a little bit more personality, I think you could improve that quite a bit. And that would be where I would start, get the sort of foundations right, and then start thinking about, okay, that I can see that you, for instance, added lots of blog posts and things like that. But I would focus more on those kind of key pages and those service pages, just how to build trust with not just search engines, but mainly with people. So when they go on there, it looks like somewhere that you would be willing to invest your money or get their expertise around your money. But because it has that California angle or the perspective, you've got so many more opportunities than a lot of financial institutions that don't have that. So I think that's really exciting. And I think if you were to work with a designer, that's something that you could easily change without needing to spend a lot of money on dev work. I personally would prioritize that. James, did you have anything else to add? Sorry, we've all gone for it, so no worries if not.
No, it's cool. I think a lot of people watching along, I've just been looking at it while we've been talking. I didn't get a chance to check it out this morning. And I agree with what you guys are saying. Tamar's exactly right as well with the domain choice. It feels a little bit odd picking an AI domain. But looking at it, I've just quickly put it in a few tools. It does look brand new, box fresh. It's a WordPress theme. I would personally select a theme that's a little bit tighter, looks a little bit more professional. And I just think the content feels a little bit spread out over perhaps maybe one too many pages. I get the first impression that the company perhaps is revolving around one key expert, and I would bring that person out to the forefront, because for financial services and planning, I'd want to work with and operate with somebody that I trust. And I almost feel that the CEO's pushed away, hidden in the background. But the priorities for me, if I was consulting on this, I'd be talking about looking at the theme, the look and feel to really connect with the audience. But the copy in particular feels as though it's, say, heavily AI generated or created from somebody that's not quite attuned to the audience. Reading bits of content such as the pricing structures based on, don't worry, it's how much you earn. We'll charge more if you earn more, charge less if you earn less. There's a few things in there that don't quite sit with me, and it doesn't feel like it flows. So I'd be working to focus on just simplifying the website and bringing out the key person that I'd be working with at California Financial. Yeah, and I can see there's a few comments in the chat about it perhaps not quite rendering correctly. So yeah, my first instincts would be to just look at the correct new theme, because it does feel a little bit homemade at the moment, and I'd want to and expect to see something a little bit more polished and professional.
Amazing. Joe, do we have anything in the chat?
Yes, we do. It's actually, Rob, was a good point. And to add what you were saying, that each state will have different regulations around finance and banking. If you're hoping to focus on those in California, then you can build the content around specifically California finance and banking information. Simon was saying that yeah, really important to look at the branding. Yeah, just around branding as well. Someone else was saying about the address is a mailbox in Beverly Hills, but the hero image is a mountain in North Carolina. It's okay to say where you are. And I think it's important, especially in finance, to say, okay, this is where my registered business address is. And you can always have the content or the images around there. One other thing I noticed as well is just the blog, like each blog post has these keywords under it and then the tags. So I don't know if that was AI generated or if that was just someone felt that you need to put tags and keywords, but you don't need to do that within the blog post. I would actually focus on writing content about what you specialize in, and you don't have to do it every single day or anything like that. Just think about, okay, what do I want to be known for? What do I specialize in? And then you'd actually put a content plan together and write that on your blog instead of just writing for the sake of it. Just looking at a few more comments, I think. Yeah, Jonathan was saying that he'd review the trust signals that you're giving out. So he shared a YouTube video. So Will Reynolds actually talked about real company stuff and being authoritative, and he shared that YouTube link. And yeah, thanks everyone. That was loads of comments.
Amazing. Great, thank you so much. Next question. How are people using the query fan-out technique in their content strategies? Google's AI mode expands a single search into dozens of related subqueries, e.g., what is X and how do I do Y? How do you structure your content to be selected during the fan-out phase? Are people changing heading styles, chunking more, or building their content around implied questions? Who would like to kick off on this one? James?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off, because what we're doing within our agency is using that sort of fan out principle to just really help with content research and structures. I think Perplexity have taken it away, but you used to be able to look at the tasks of when a search is performed to see what those additional queries are that are being performed in the background. You can do a similar thing in Gemini. I believe if you perform a search, I think it's slow down or see the process to get an idea as to how that sort of model is fanning out, which I know it's not the same as AI mode, but it's fairly similar. And at the moment, from our perspective, in terms of talking to clients about showing up in AI search, it's not just trying to replicate the exact long form question that's being asked, but just trying to understand how those kind of potential fan out questions are being purposed to create content to fill those areas. So from our perspective, on a solid bed of structured data and accessible server-side rendered content from us, it's really just making sure that where there are question-based intent, we have that kind of content for print and sort of FAQs on the site to make sure that we're capturing everything. So from our perspective at the moment, the thing that we're really liking is using the process of fan out to perform and fill gaps from a content marketing perspective.
Great. Itamar, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with what James is saying. I also think that the query fan out principally is not too different in terms of how traditionally people thought about SEO and content strategy and having content hubs and pillars and trying to address all potential types of questions and themes around the niche that you're targeting. Right. So I don't think any of that is particularly new. I think it's like when people do see it in action, then it becomes a lot more real to them where you can see in AI mode, for example, as you make a query, you see the number of sites that, or the number of queries that have been entered rises super fast on this counter. And then you're like, okay, wow, there's so much sort of content being looked at. And I think with that, in terms of what you can do, there are different things. So either you've just got different pieces of content addressing different potential types of questions that are relevant to it at different maybe stages of the buyer journey. So a lot of queries will, from what I've seen, split them down in terms of the information. Like you put in something and it's okay, what is this? What are the implications? What's it good for? What are some examples? All of these things can, in theory, be different types of content on a website. You can also potentially have content that's hosted on other types of platforms. So there may be some content that's maybe better, more consideration type things might be better for a forum such as Reddit, for instance, right? Where it's okay, if you've got at least mentions over there, that can be helpful to surface on those. But you can use tools like Also Asked, which I hinted in the chat, which you can get an understanding of what other strands of questions and themes are relevant to the sort of pillar topic that you're looking at. And I think tools like that are really great for being able to have this exploratory sort of understanding in terms of what are people actually looking for, and then how do you then take that and figure out how can I, in the most unbiased possible way, include these types of things on either your own website or at least trying to continue the conversation and be able to hype yourself up across other types of platforms or forums.
Great. Do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything else to add. I was actually looking at Mark William Cook's also asked. So apologies, that was the sound that was coming through if you heard it. Check that out. And also from the chat, we have Jordan said that he's actually been experimenting with Dan Petrovic's query fan out generator. So he shared a link to that. He highly recommends checking it out and giving it a go. Dan Petrovic's over in Australia, Brisbane, but he's actually speaking out, spoke at quite a few conferences, spoke at SEO Week in New York recently in May. And Mark said that, oh yeah, he has a comment about LLMs. So I'll wait for if you have anything else to say, Mike, before I go through Mark's comment.
Yeah, not that much more to add. The only thing I would say is I think thinking about query fan technique, fan out technique, I think it just helps you create better content because you're thinking about what other questions somebody might have when they're reading what you're doing. And hopefully it will change those kind of ultimate guides that we've talked about this before, but I think years ago, every blog post, you just wanted an answer to something and you would get like the history of, about, and so on before you actually got to what you need. And I like actually that this switches it around and you're starting with, this is my question, and here is actually some genuine content that I might be interested in, as opposed to finding out the history of this. Simon always talks about recipes or mentions in that, but all of that stuff, you're not. Whereas, for instance, if there's a recipe and you're using a particular tool, it's quite cool if there are some alternatives, for example, using that particular tool rather than just finding out all the history and where the recipes come from. Great. Joe, did you want to mention, you said that Mark's mentioned something?
Yeah, so Mark, you mentioned, has anyone found any convincing evidence that LLMs are using structured data? That's quite a good question. That's open to the floor for everyone. If so, at which stage do you think it's used? My understanding would be it's only possible during RAG, as tokenization being lossy would break the explicit nature of schema that makes it usable. He's only seen one small test. So if anyone has anything to comment on that, please do. We have just had one comment so far from Simon. Thanks, Simon. He's been wondering that himself, actually. Not seen anything that would suggest it, but he's expecting to latch onto it at some point. I think he's expecting them to latch onto it at some point. But it is worth setting up some tests. I'm glad to hear from Itamar and James that they are allocating time within the agencies to, have this testing with AI, because this is so new, everyone. And wanted to say thank you also to everyone that's joining us watching the recording. If you do want to watch us live, please just sign up to SEO Office Hours. It's on the Good Signals homepage. We'll have a link there, and you can then watch the recordings from all the other episodes. And of course, as you love them so much, you can click a like on those videos and continue to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thanks, Joe. Okay, let's jump on to this question. How is Google defining and detecting originality? It seems that Google has moved from momentum and freshness to now prioritizing originality, especially in response to the explosion of AI-generated content. Does anybody have any thoughts?
This might be a bit contentious. The concept of AI-generated content, which I do agree with, there has been obviously a massive surge in AI-generated content. The question, though, is if Google's moving away from originality or moving away from freshness, for example. I think it depends on where you're looking. I think AI mode in particular is one that does try and take a look at freshness because it's taking into account a lot more context when people are searching for things. And I think even within traditional Google search, there is a concept, I would say, of freshness, where Google sort of understands that content that has been published or is talking about a particular topic in a newer time period, then that would be more relevant if you take away other types of signals that were traditionally used to rank pages. So I don't necessarily think that Google is necessarily moving away from something to favor something else. I think Google, generally speaking, has a lot of issues, as it always really has done. And it's still trying to figure out how best to address what types of results to show based on the type of query and what people would actually want. And I think AI mode has just been an experiment to really try and build more trust by telling people that it's going to be contextual, it's going to be personalized, and it's going to have exactly what you want in a very nice, colloquial, conversational type of setup. But to say that it's moving away from things like freshness, I wouldn't necessarily say that's true, at least in my opinion.
James, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with what Itamar is saying in terms of how they're defining detecting. I think this is a challenge that's going to continue to be faced by not just Google, but all platforms. I know there was quite a lot in the media early last year. A lot of the big publishers were talking about the sort of tidal wave of AI generated slop, I think was the headline that one of the big publishers used. Yeah, again, I agree that I don't think things are moving away from momentum or necessarily freshness. I just think there's going to be a bigger draw on identifying the source, the origin, reputation of the content, where it's come from. And I think for me, it's that sort of challenge of, I think originality is going to be quite a big part of this, but I think it will just be focused more in on those kind of traditional EEAT principles more than anything. I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, but I just don't think there's anything really that I would focus on that we should be doing any differently at the moment other than producing great original content.
Great. Joe, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing in particular. Only wanted to reinforce what James and Itamar are saying, and also to say that, we've seen lots of changes within search the past sort of 20 years or so, but the standards have always been, or the principles have been the same. Like Google wants to deliver content that is helpful for the user, so they will always focus on sort of fresh, useful content, the more fresh content, and also ones that are more authoritative. However, I think with the onset of with AI coming in, what we have seen, especially with the AI overviews, is some citations linking to articles that are maybe older or articles that are maybe not as relevant. But just want to stress that it is still new. So I wouldn't base on what's happening now is, okay, that's going to be the future. So it is important to focus on what we've always been working towards: good content, engaging in non-spammy link building techniques. And I'll just add a couple of facts. Actually, Jonathan was saying that when he was at uni just a few years ago, people working on a novelty detection. Interesting.
Oh, cool.
That sounds quite good. And Itamar was saying, as we've seen with the helpful content update, algorithmically, Google has been weak, but manual actions were pretty spot on. Most of the time, we had a manual action and it was spot on. it hurt a lot. It took a long time to get over that. And yeah, I think that's it actually for now.
Great. I agree with Itamar about I don't think Google's choosing that over freshness or popularity. I think it's that there's more than just one thing that's taken into account. And I think with just looking at the question with original, I don't think that means that you can't use AI tools. I think AI can still produce original content. But I think it's very obvious when if somebody's just put a ton of content, just basically asked for a load of posts, LinkedIn posts or something like that, and they've just published it straight away, and it's super obvious that's not original and it's just from something like ChatGPT. But I think with human research and human editing and so on, I think you can still create some really good original content. However, my point there with the spotting that on LinkedIn is just as a human, even without reading it, sometimes there are certain things that, as I think we all know, that ChatGPT do, where it's so obvious it was just written by a tool rather than a human. Yeah, great, amazing. Joe, we are flying through the questions today. This is a bit unlike us. We're usually faffing around. James, you said
Don't,
you're a waffler. I can't believe it.
no jinxing, no jinxing.
Yeah.
We have a few. We're coming up to question 5. I just thought about something else, so I'll wait till that. Oh, Jojo says yes. I'll never give up my M dash. Written by a tool is wow, lots of comments. Okay, let's go to the next question, then I'll read the comments.
Can I say I used to work with a head of content, and I used to drive her mad with the dashes I used to use in sentences. And she used to tell me you can't do it, it's so irritating. And now I really can't because now it's like the thing that ChatGPT does, like puts in everything. It looks like everything I've written is by ChatGPT. It's so annoying.
Oh,
Okay.
actually, sorry,
Oh,
we have a question, sorry, from Mark.
yes.
If we have time for questions. So question for James or Itamar. James, you mentioned that Google is looking at trust authority of the sources, but does anyone have any ideas on how Google might do this in the future if users are using AI mode? They aren't going to be linking to the sites. They aren't going to be clicking on the SERPs. All the additional things that search engine used before to gouge authority. So that's quite interesting. Yeah. How will we get that? James, do you have an idea? Maybe how Google might look at the trust authority of the source?
Like I say, it's a sort of possible theory as to how they could lean into other or more sort of traditional signals as to justifying where and how the kind of content has come from if sort of detection becomes even more complex as time moves on. It's a good point that Mark raises. And in theory, you could put that somebody has authored something on a brand new website or something with lower authority, and just even by saying that it's from a certain person doesn't necessarily mean it's so. Whether there's something that could be done algorithmically that can identify the sources with people that content is from that person. But I think as knowing that's where the source of the information is coming from or where it was originally posted, that may be something it's a good question. I don't know, Itamar, if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah. Google, for example, there's so much data that Google collects in terms of user behavior and user engagement. So like people say that Chrome, for example, is the biggest spyware tool in the world, where Google is able to understand how people are navigating through content, through pages, what their journey is like all the time with so many data points. So the question really being, okay, with AI mode, if that becomes the default and there's going to be less people actually going on websites and with the agentic search experience of being able to fill out forms and buy things without even going on a website, then that's going to hinder a lot of that, the ability to gauge how users are actually seeing websites in terms of their authority, credibility, their trust. So that is a big problem, and it's going to be something that Google has to figure out a way of really understanding what quality is and what quality looks like and what people expect from it. Because otherwise, yeah, if you're going to be severely limiting your data points, then you're going to have less to work with and things are going to be a lot more ambiguous. So I don't really think that I don't have the answers to that. I sure hope that Google has thought about that in terms of how it might gauge these things in the future.
Great, Joe. Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't have anything to add, just a couple of comments from the chat, so feel free to add before I go to the comments.
I'm just going to say that at the moment, and this is based on a question that we had going back about a month ago around the content being served as related articles in AI mode when it was just only in the US at that point. And actually, I've been paying attention to that more so since that question. And it is rubbish, some of the articles that are being sort of
Yeah.
sources. I don't know if anyone's come across them, but the question that we had was just that we wouldn't usually do link building to articles like this. However, they're appearing, should we? That was the question. And it's, yeah, just absolute rubbish that you wouldn't want your website associated with. And obviously it's just because we're at the beginning and that'll change over time. But I've really noticed that just some of the sort of related articles that are being served are just not so great.
Yeah, I don't think that some of the ones and the AI overview, like the citations, good comment from Rob. Actually, he says, I still maintain that it's time to relaunch Google Plus. That idea was a decade ahead of its time, trying to link humans to the source. And Simon said, yes, if they had not canned it, just think how much data they would have to train AI now. Bet someone's having second thoughts on that. Good point, Simon. So yeah, very interesting to hear from everyone. Thank you. Sorry, just having a few other comments in the chat, but it's an image. But thank you everyone for your feedback.
Great. Okay, super. Let's see if we can fit this question in. I think we can. How do you know if your SEO provider is actually doing a good job? What should they be expected to show over the next, oh, sorry, what should they be expected to show over 12 months? If results don't improve, how do you tell if it's the strategy, the algorithm, or just the person you're working with? Joe, do you want to kick off on this one?
This is a great question. How do you know if your SEO provider is doing a good job? It's because they're actually transparent with you, upfront with you, and honest. So you actually put together a brief. You've asked someone to respond to that brief, and that person is delivering on it. And they're actually updating you regularly on what you have agreed. What are your KPIs? And they're reporting on that regularly, whether you've said it's 2 weeks, whether you say it's every month. And then back to if results don't improve, this depends on what results have you asked them to do. So you have to be really clear. Okay, I would like us to see an increase in organic traffic. I'd like us to see an increase in traffic overall, because maybe they're working on partnerships with other people as well. Maybe they're working on also helping with integrating with the social media strategy. And how do you tell if it's a strategy, the algorithm, or the person? The strategy would be because they're linking back to, okay, this is our plan and I would say for SEO, it's important you can plan for 12 months, but review it every quarter because things change so quickly. So this is what we said we do this month. This is what we said we do this quarter, and this is what we have achieved. This is what we have not been able to achieve because of X, Y, and Z. And then back to the algorithm, your colleagues, your SEO person will be able to tell you, oh, I believe we have been affected by the March update. Oh, I believe we've been a bit affected by the latest Google update, and this is why. So that's how you can see if that person is doing a good job. Back to the original thing I said, they're honest, transparent, and they're clear with what they said they're going to achieve against what the results are.
Amazing. James, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, it's a very broad question, but I would say that you would know if the SEO is doing a good job if you've got that partnership where the SEO can understand the right KPIs, the right outcomes to match with the business needs of the person setting the brief. Often those who are appointing an SEO or an agency, they maybe know the outcome they want. And I think if you're working with somebody great, they can work to tell you the approach, the tactics to get there, and then measure progress along that line. So if a brand or a client is obsessing over specific keyword rankings, I think it's the role and responsibility of the SEO to work with them to ensure that focus and attention and the reporting is measuring the right things rather than just appeasing perhaps the known or what the person setting the brief thinks they want to see. And I think it's just being clear, open, and honest, and not doing anything in the background that they wouldn't be comfortable sharing and talking through and articulating. Yeah, I think for me, it's just having that sort of mutual understanding and trust where the SEO can help explain to the client exactly what they're doing and why and what the expected outcome is, presenting progress against those KPIs and just working together. I think anybody that's just working in isolation and just hoping that the client sees the performance themselves, I think it's a sort of collaboration.
Great. Mark, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think James is spot on there. I think you can closely tie the person or the people to the strategy in terms of they're coming up with it based on having those conversations with you to understand what's the scope, what is it you're looking to do, where you're currently at, and doing that due diligence as well. Where if results aren't there and you're like, okay, we've tried to remedy it within 12 months, I don't necessarily like the algorithm excuse. And I want to say that, and I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings when I say this, but generally speaking, when algorithm updates happen, it's not like everyone goes down. There's people who go up as well. So you need to remember that being hit by an algorithm update, if you're doing something that's inherently wrong and you've gone down, somebody's taken your place that's doing supposedly something better. So I don't necessarily like that argument, but to do with the person and the strategy, I think absolutely you need to have somebody or people who are able to understand the context of where you are to get all the right information, but also to get all the input. So I think it's not always a one-way thing, which is, okay, my provider's doing a bad job because the results aren't there. But then you have to think critically. It's okay, have you given them all the tools that they need? Have you actually actioned things that have been recommended? Are you signing off on things that would be able to help? Because if the answer to a lot of these is no, especially when it comes to something that's pretty critical for you if you want to improve, then that's not necessarily on your provider. That's on you and gatekeeping in many ways. Or maybe you've got arguments with brand teams and things like that. So I don't necessarily think it's super one-sided. I think that it takes two to tango. You can't just say, I'm going to spend money on a provider and they're going to need to give me a good job because I've spent this money. It's not how it works. I do really agree with what James was saying in terms of having those honest conversations and being very upfront in terms of if your KPI is keyword rankings, like we can report on that, but is that actually the thing that's going to help your business grow? I don't know. I don't think so. So it's just one of those where there's so many different elements that you have to align on. And I think if you're misaligned, then that's not just to say your provider's a bad provider. They could be, right? But then again, I think you also have to look at yourself sometimes. So it's a very nuanced type of question. And as James said, it's very broad, but hopefully these can give you some things to think about.
Great. That's actually what I was going to add to the question. I was going to say I think the thing missing from here is you, the person who's asked the question, because it's tell me if it's the strategy, the algorithm, or the person. Could also be the client as well, like Itamar just said. And actually, that was something that years ago I set up this. We used to do account management, and instead I've shifted that to like an accountability club instead, where when I start working with somebody, it's also trying to help their team become like better SEOs and get stuff over the line. Because I've just found that, and I'm not blaming all clients, but often SEO is just one of many things that you're juggling. And if you're not signing things off or giving, like Itamar said, all the tools or resources or everything that's required, then it is going to fail. And that's worked really well having, and so yeah, so that's one of the reasons I did that. I think the other thing is what is success to you? So if you're just looking at everything overall in terms of metrics, then and things haven't changed that much, then that's not going to be that helpful. Whereas if you're breaking things down by, for instance, non-branded terms and things like that, and seeing if you're getting traffic for those kind of commercial terms, then that can be a little bit more useful, certain sections of the website that they're working on, whatever it is, but rather than just looking at the website overall. Because, for instance, you may not be running some sort of PR or advertising campaign that might be impacting branded traffic, or there are so many things. So I think getting your agency, and hopefully they're doing this anyway, but to explain what they've been working on and what impact that's had to those kind of commercial terms that people who don't know you are visiting. I would just make sure that's how you're evaluating success. Joe, do we have anything in the chat?
We have. Simon said that company should not destroy your brand reputation. That's the base minimum. Jonathan made some good points as well. Review the scope of work, look at the objective, strategy, initiatives, the tactics, the resources, allocation, and reporting frequency. Simon also mentioned they should be able to bring in more organic traffic than paid over a year for a fraction of the price. I think you should be able to see, a lot of people have seen an increase in that once working on their SEO strategy. Rob said, yeah, +1 on that one. And another point that Simon mentioned is that, yeah, good SEOs, they tend to provide a lot more than that pure SEO. So you should look at what they bring to the business. Are they setting up partnerships with anybody else? Are they making sure that, are they educating the rest of the business as well about site migration, for example? It's not just under the SEO team. Just it depends. No more thing. Okay, so yeah, lots of comments in the chat, and we've only got 1 minute left.
So we've only got 1 minute, so we will jump to our final question. So very quick answers, if that's all right, which is, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment? James, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
It's not going away. It's just changing and evolving. I think we're at the very start of that change, and that change is looking at the results daily in our clients' analytics platforms. It's very slight, but it's the start of something quite different. Yeah, that's change is exciting, and anyone that can upturn the monopoly that is Google and push them to do things better, I just think it's an exciting time rather than a scary time.
Amazing. Itamar, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment?
I think that for the first time in a long time, we're all in the same boat. So there's all sorts of these big challenges and problems and things that we're being exposed to, and it's happening at the same time for everyone. So I think it's a really great opportunity to engage, collaborate, talk to people, try things out, because we're all trying to figure this out together, which is a very wholesome aspect of SEO, which is why I love it.
Great. Very quickly, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
Excited to see more of these type of chats and discussions and testing with AI.
Great. And as Simon says, we're all in this shit together. I like that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you first to our special guests, James and Itamar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our live audience who I think really make SEO Office Hours. Thank you so much. Thank you to those watching on YouTube. Come join us live. It's so much better. Thank you so much to Joe for co-hosting, and thank you to those that submitted questions. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike, Itamar, James, and everyone for joining the show today.
Thanks so
Bye.
much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.